How did Wall Street get its name? Well, surely it was just some investor, last name Wall, named after that person, and there you have it, right? Wrong. Good morning, happy Friday. Welcome to Sunrise Small Talk episode number 22. Today we're going to talk about the origin of Wall Street. It is 7:05, lots of rain this week, so hopefully all of your lawns are nice and green and beautiful. So let me start with this. This is an image I took. I was walking along Wall Street and I saw this Lincoln hood ornament embedded in the asphalt. And I started thinking, what's the story behind this? It's clearly been here for a long time. It looks like a 50s era Lincoln hood ornament to me. Was this something that had to do with a mobster or a president or one of the famous original investors along Wall Street? So anyway, I thought, let's dive into that history and talk about where Wall Street got its name. And I don't know the story behind that hood ornament, obviously. I'll always be curious, though. So, Wall Street, not named after a person at all. It was back in the 1600s, the Dutch actually built a wall along the southern tip of Manhattan to keep the Brits out. And that is how Wall Street got its name. Fast forward a couple centuries here, 1792. This is where the New York Stock Exchange really was founded, where that foundation was laid. There was something called the Buttonwood Agreement. And this Buttonwood Agreement, it was called that because it was signed under a buttonwood tree, and it was exactly 2 sentences long. So obviously, compared to the paperwork that we do this day and age, whether that's with me or buying a house, getting a mortgage, how great would that be to not have so many attorneys involved and just have a document that's 2 sentences casually signed underneath a tree? So that was kind of the foundation of the New York Stock Exchange back in the late 1700s. We fast forward from about 792 when the Buttonwood Agreement was signed to 1817. This was the era of Alexander Hamilton, who was actually the first Secretary of the Treasury, the seat that's currently held by Janet Yellen, who's been in the news a lot the last couple of years with what's going on with inflation and interest rates. So he created, as the Secretary of Treasury, the first central banking system in the United States. He created the concept of issuing U.S. government bonds that were used to pay Revolutionary War debt. So in this time period, 1792 to the early 1800s, there was 30 stocks that were traded, and people met in coffee shops, similar to what I do today and what people in my position do today. Sure, it looked very different back then, but same kind of concept. Met in coffee shops. They actually rented a place. The New York Stock Exchange was paying rent in some building and trading 30 stocks. Trading stocks amongst friends, really. So as this trading amongst friends became ever more popular, seats were issued. So at the time, what a seat was you actually had a chair in a room, and if you had a seat, that allowed you to participate in the exchanging of these 30 stocks. We still have seats today. TD Ameritrade has a seat at the New York Stock Exchange. Charles Schwab does. The large banking institutions have seats. They look very different now than they did back then, but that's how the term seat initiated. So from 1865 to 67, we had a new building. So as opposed to paying rent, they moved into building on Wall Street and Broad Street, which southern tip of Manhattan, if you've been there, those are intersecting streets. And tickers. This was very revolutionary. Tickers. So what tickers are is those are the codes that represent a company. So Amazon, AMZN, Exxon, XOM, Apple, the one that always throws me off, and I can't actually spell the word Apple right anymore because their ticker is AAPL. So if you tell me to write down the word Apple, I'll probably spell it wrong with 2 A's instead of 2 P's. This was a time period where the steel, rail, and banking industry was really taking off. So these companies were listing their shares on the stock exchange. These guys in this book here, the tycoons, very good book. It's kind of the foundation of American industry. But J.P. Morgan, Carnegie, Rockefeller, those guys, they were listing shares of their companies, and that was their way to initially raise capital, which is something we still obviously see today. Phones were introduced, so that obviously was a big technological advancement. If we go to fast forward a few years to 1870, that's when the first bell. So to try to keep some orderly chaos, we obviously ring the bell at the beginning, at the opening of the market and the close of the market. And this was actually, I was able to witness this here in this video. This was not at the New York Stock Exchange, but actually at the NASDAQ. This was a few years back. Was able to watch the NASDAQ opening bell ceremony, which was pretty cool and kind of funny. This huge NASDAQ building in the middle of Times Square. All this hype around the opening bell ceremony, and then once that's over, it's kind of just crickets. A few interns sitting in some cubicles and nobody else in the building, and that was that. So fast forward to 1903. This was very exciting era. This is where they built the new building. So if you Google, or if you're familiar with pictures of that giant grand ballroom, the trading floor, it's a 4-story marble walls, new bell. So in the 70s, it was a Chinese gong that they were using. That was replaced with an actual large brass bell, electronically operated. The marble walls. When we picture the New York Stock Exchange, that big, beautiful trading room, that's what this building was. This was actually not on Wall Street, but on Broad Street. New York Stock Exchange added buildings over the course of time, and the current address is 11 Wall Street. And obviously from that time, early 1900 to today, ton of advancements with technology, add in the NASDAQ, Chicago Mercantile Exchange, all those other exchanges, and now we're trading, millions and millions of shares of stocks every single day. And this is something interesting. I actually didn't know this. In 2013, the New York Stock Exchange was bought by a company called ICE, capital I, capital C, capital E. So it's actually New York Stock Exchange does not own itself. It's owned by a separate company. And then in 2020 was the first time that trading was completely electronic. There was nobody in the building, and obviously technology over the course of time has just really changed the landscape and the way the stock exchange looks. But there you have it. Wall Street, not named after an individual, named after the Dutch, who put it up to protect themselves from a British invasion, and some of the history over the last few hundred years. Hope that was entertaining and helpful. If you like history and have a fascination for Wall Street and Manhattan in general, I think you probably enjoyed that. So feel free to comment, like, share, and we'll see you next week. Take care.